Hey, First United Methodist friends, it's Pastor Shannon here with our weekly update for June 27th. Well, the first thing I want to say is a huge thank you to everyone who volunteered and participated in our misting tent at Waterfest. I was only able to be out there for a couple of hours on Saturday, but I had such a fun time connecting with people in the community, passing out water bottles, and simply offering people a place to come and cool off. But I know it was a lot of hard work. I especially want to thank Gary for his efforts and getting together the supplies and materials, putting up the tent. But thank you to all who were able to come and stop by, help out, even if it was just for an hour or so. Now, we are in the middle of this sermon series called Bible Stories for Grown-ups, and I've had so much fun looking at these Old Testament stories that we grew up hearing and learning about when we were kids. But as we've talked about, a lot of these stories, they raise more questions than they answer, and can even leave us feeling pretty unsettled, such as the story of Noah that we talked about this past Sunday. So one of the tools we can use as we read these stories as grown-ups is to put on the grown-up lenses of curiosity as we ask questions of the story, and also the lens of reading these stories and taking them seriously, but not necessarily literally. So when we do this, we're actually engaging in a process that's very similar to what ancient Jewish rabbis and scholars would do when they would engage these very same texts. Through a process known as Midrash, they would try to fill in the gaps of the story, try to seek to engage not only with what the text says, but how it speaks to our lives today and the questions that it might raise. Midrash is important because it uses these lenses of curiosity and serious engagement. Well, last year in seminary, I took a class on Genesis taught by a Jewish rabbi, and he taught us about this really interesting bit of Midrash about the person of Noah. So as we look at the story of Noah, the Bible says in Genesis 6:9 that Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his generation. Noah walked with God. And presumably that's the reason why God chose Noah to be spared in the ark along with his family, because he was righteous and blameless. And as we learn, during Noah's time, the rest of the world was pretty evil and corrupt. Genesis 6:5 says that the Lord saw the wickedness of humans was so great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of their hearts was only evil continually. So when the Bible says that Noah was righteous among his generation, what exactly does that mean? Well, there's a couple different ways we can interpret this. One Jewish rabbi, Rabbi Yochanan, says this: Noah was above reproach only in his generation, but in other generations he would not have been considered righteous. In other words, the world was so bad that Noah was the best human alive, but that didn't necessarily mean he was all that great or all that righteous. And that makes sense, because if you go on to read later in Genesis, you'll see that Noah gets into a little bit of trouble with some drunk and disorderly behavior. But a different rabbi, Rabbi Lachish, he believed that since humanity was so depraved and so corrupt in Noah's day, that he must have been extra righteous, like the best human that has ever lived. He was obedient and peaceful and kind and loving during a day when the rest of society was completely violent and destructive. Well, which view of Noah is correct? Well, of course, I don't know the answer, but I enjoy asking these questions and engaging thoughtfully in the stories of the Bible more deeply through the process of Midrash, and I hope that you have enjoyed this series as well. Well, this next Sunday, July 2nd, we're going to be looking at the story of Abraham sacrificing Isaac. So I'm sure that will raise a lot of more questions for us, and I can't wait to talk more about it with you then.